We're doing a tier list on the most important muscles to look the most jacked and big. So, what are the most important muscles to look as big as possible? Obviously, every muscle being big will make you look bigger, but not every muscle is equal. Today, I'm going to show you the muscles you're going to want to focus mostly on. These photos of the muscles were already here as I took this as a pre-made template. I did change the category names though, which we have today as GOAT, Amazing, Good to Have, Mid, and Useless. As GOAT being the best of the best, and the muscles in the useless category will not be pretty much benefiting you in your way to looking the most jacked. So, let's start with abs. For being jacked and as big as possible, abs aren't too great, and that's why I'm going to put them in the mid category. Good muscular abs do bring up your muscularity to a degree. A good example is Eddie Hall, who has a very high body fat percentage, about 25%, I think, and he still has visible abs. So, abs are okay but not the greatest. But if this were an aesthetic muscle tier list, abs would likely be very high as they serve a big role in aesthetics. Next up, biceps. Biceps aren't a very big of a muscle. They are a bit overrated for looking as big as possible when triceps are 2/3 of your total arm mass. I'm going to put these in the good to have tier, because they do make you appear bigger to a degree, but definitely not the most important muscle to focus on if your goal is to look the biggest overall. Next, we've got shoulders. Shoulders are most definitely our first GOAT tier muscle. Shoulders are the most important muscle to look the biggest, whether you are shirtless or have clothes on. These will make or break your physique pretty much. All heads of shoulders are important, rear delt and medial delt being a bit more important than the front delt. Next, hamstrings. These are pretty much useless, but I'm still gonna put them in the mid tier, as if your hamstrings are small, your legs will just look weird and small. But on the other hand, no one has ever in the history of mankind said to someone, "Oh, you have very nice hamstrings." Nobody even really sees your hamstrings. Of course, if you compete at bodybuilding shows, you may want to build all your muscles up to a good level. But hamstrings shouldn't be your priority. Next, we've got chest. Your chest is important. You do look weird and small, especially from the front view, if you have a small chest in comparison to your other muscles and body. This I'm going to put in the amazing tier even though the chest is a bit overrated to an extent. Nothing else to really say about it. Next, calves. Yeah, well, these are going straight into the useless category. They don't add pretty much anything to your physique, and when you have big calves, you are going to look shorter and blockier. No one really cares about your calves. I don't personally even train calves anymore. Forearms we got next. These are the calves of your upper body, but because they are in your upper body, they are a bit more important. They do add to your physique a nice bonus. I'm going to put forearms in the mid category because they aren't that important to look jacked and big. Next, we got your lats. These are pretty important. If this were an aesthetics tier list, lats would be at the GOAT tier, but for just looking as big as possible, I'm not gonna put these in the GOAT tier. I think amazing is a reasonable tier for lats. Next, we have your glutes. If you are a guy, no one really cares about your glute size. These have basically the same explanation as hamstrings. Even though glutes are a bit more important than hamstrings, glutes are still going to the mid tier. Upper back and traps next. These are actually very close to being on the GOAT tier, but I will have to drop them to the very top of the amazing tier because they aren't as important as shoulders, but upper back and traps will make you look astronomically jacked. And the best thing is that you don't even need to flex them so that you look big from the back. The only downside with traps is that if your traps are very big, your shoulders start to look more narrow. Don't be scared about this though. You won't get easily naturally that big of traps. Next, we got triceps here. These are going to the amazing tier. Your arms won't look big if your triceps are lacking. The only reason triceps aren't going any higher is because they are not at the same level as shoulders. Lastly, we got quadriceps. Your quads are easily the most important part of your legs as a man. Quads aren't still going very high because legs aren't that important of a muscle to look the most jacked you can. I'm still going to put them in the good to have tier. It's definitely a plus to have good quads, but as I said, not that important. So finally, here it is, my personal tier list on muscles on what to train if your goal is to look as jacked as possible. Let me know in the comments what your list would look.